Hello, this is Lisa LaRose here on Connect to Love on PRNFM, and I'm joined by the incredible Michael J. Russ. I want to welcome you, Michael, and I'm so excited. It's going to be a fun show, and it's a beautiful day. So how are you today?
I'm awesome. I feel really good. Energized. Heck, man, it's beautiful and sunny outside. It was 76 when I took a walk at 8 a.m. this morning. So
nice.
That's, and 86. Actually, I think it's over 90 today with the heat index, but hey, who's counting?
I know. We are having a beautiful day here, but we had an incredible storm last night with an unbelievable lightning that had my dogs in a panic. They were hiding. Everybody was hiding and clamoring to get on my lap, when that only works when you have one dog, but when you have multiple dogs, I only have so much lap space. So we had high winds, all kinds of craziness go on. But it made me think about a hurricane, right? I'm landlocked, but we had some tornadoes off in West Virginia, and I'm saying prayers that everybody's okay. But you're in Florida, so you know what hurricanes are like. And just like the eye of a hurricane, there is a calm centeredness amidst this incredible turmoil and wind and all of these different storms that go on. And so I was thinking about how fear, much like the turbulent winds that surround the eye of the hurricane, they can dissipate when we choose to move into the center of calm. And when we anchor ourselves in love and peace, we can find that stability amidst all of the chaos and really choose to see through the eyes of love rather than fear. And it was a little difficult explaining that to my dogs last night, but I think that you choose to see through the eyes of love. I think that when we do, it empowers us to create and to manifest the life that we desire. There is so much to be said. So I thought it was going to be sort of a fun topic, inspired by the storms last night. Yeah,
I agree. The whole hurricane thing is, the season's coming up on June 1, and when it comes to the calmness inside of us, that spot is generally missed very easily when we're talking about going from morning till night, getting up from the moment we get up to the moment we go to bed, with the sometimes Looney Tune aspect of the day, how we perceive the day for us. I know that for me, I like to get up in the morning and find that spot, that sweet spot, through some light meditation, and I know you kind of do the same thing. And it's not getting up in the morning and jumping into a rat race of activity. It's finding that center and that sweet spot and being able to, we call it the eye of the hurricane. The eye of the hurricane is where all the wind just dies. It could be 220 miles an hour, and all of a sudden, nothing. And until
That's amazing.
It's like this. It's this circle, and when it comes over you, all of a sudden, if you're within it, all that wind just dies. You have to go through the eye wall. The eye wall is really, really, really high in terms of winds, and the highest winds being on the east side, all along the east side, from the north to the south, the east side. That's where you get the highest degree of winds. And in our lives, we have these perceived storms that we go through. It's really interesting because perceptions, in my book, as I have been professing for years, perceptions pretty much dictate everything. Your thoughts, your feelings, your responses, whatever actions you take, of course. And any reactions that you have are based on those perceptions. So if your perception of the day is as if it's going to be when you get up in the morning, like a hurricane where things are going to be off the charts and crazy, and you're not going to, out of your control, that's the way you're going to live your day. And that perception will drive all of your thoughts and responses to whatever it is that happens. So finding the eye of the hurricane is going to be a little bit of a challenge, because you already see yourself in the midst of it, right? You perceive yourself, and then mentally see yourself in the middle of this craziness, this chaos, so to speak, as we were talking about, in the last episode, is there. But we don't have to see that. We don't have to perceive our day as being that way, even though it might be busy. We as humans like to characterize and judge things as one way or another, and what we have to be careful of is that characterization, that definition, that perception that we create about our day is going to then drive how we feel. And I don't like to let the outside world drive how I feel. I like to be the one in control of that, and we should all strive for that. I know you do, I do, and many of our listeners, I'm sure, do. And if not, hey, this is how you get back, your ability to control your own life and your feelings, and be able to get into that sweet spot, that eye of the hurricane, even when you're in the midst of the what you would previously call the craziness and the chaos. It's where we have that ability to control that.
Oh, without a doubt, Michael. And I really appreciate your insight about the wall, the eye of the wall. Is that what you called it?
The eye of the hurricane.
But you said there was the wall.
Yeah, there's the eye wall. The eye wall.
Eye wall.
There's the eye of the hurricane.
I've never heard that before.
Oh, yeah. The eye wall is simply the part, it's the barrier between quiet and the most intensity. So the eye wall.
What a great metaphor.
Yeah, the eye wall moves.
For our lives, right?
So you step from the hurricane through the eye wall, which is the most damaging of the winds and the madness and of the force of the hurricane, into complete and total calm and quiet. Everything just dies down. You're in the middle of it. It's as if you'd be thinking, oh, that thing's passed already. Wow, that's great. Which may last 40 minutes, maybe last a half an hour, depending on how fast it could sit there for a while. Because in reality, hurricanes, they move at their own pace, not a pace that you have any control over. So if you have a fast-moving hurricane like we had here 5 years ago, the eye wall moved very quickly. The eye of a hurricane moved very quickly. And in the Bahamas, it sat there for 24 hours. So, if you're...
That's so fascinating.
It is a fascinating concept. You get to know that the language because you're in it. I've been in hurricanes, and in the Pacific they call them typhoons, because they go counterclockwise here and clockwise in the other other side of the world. They go in the Pacific. They spin differently. So the bottom line here is that we decide whether our life, our day is like a hurricane or not. We have that decision.
Oh, 100%.
That's what we have to always remember, is that even in the midst of everything that's going on, how we perceive what's going on, we can perceive it in a calm manner. We can see what everybody else running around at 100 miles an hour, we can be in slow motion, just literally working our way right through it, just moving from one space to another.
And, Michael, I got to tell you, so this morning I woke up and I was hearing a song by Katy Perry called Roar. And in that song, she alludes to the eye of the tiger, which we also know there's another song. But she said, and it's funny how I get these, I call those sort of soundtracks from my soul. And, she said, I've got the eye of a tiger, a fighter dancing through the fire, and that's what and you're going to hear me roar. And I thought about that, and when you said that about the languaging, you understand the language of the hurricane. I think that you also learn to understand the language of love. You understand the language of fear, but I think love is obviously, in my opinion, more powerful. And then you think about the eyes in themselves, and I don't know if it's funny because there is the parable that the eyes are the windows to the soul. And whether it's being attributed to William Shakespeare, I think somebody attributed it to Leonardo da Vinci. But the idea that there is this light within you in this darkness that can be perceived all around you. But when you focus on that, and really whether you see through a child's eyes. And I try to do that. And, that's why I'm a little bit like wacky sometimes. I like to dance and be whimsical and see things as magical and just choose a different languaging. That same thing. And, and I agree with you. It is your perception. How are you perceiving it? And when you choose to embrace that love, it really can shift everything just in an instant. It's exactly how you perceive it.
That is so true. Great analogy, by the way. I like that. I like that a lot. That's really, really awesome. We have that capability. The question is, are we aware of it and at all times, and aware of our ability to choose it? We choose to respond in the way that we respond to things that go on out there. And I find it interesting because I heard Bashar say the other day, it was interesting in a conversation he was having with somebody. It was the old, so what? That's you. That's you making it happen. Take responsibility for the reality that you're experiencing. This is something that hits home in a very hard way for people, especially people who have been taught to perceive, the fact that the things that societally are judged or chosen to be really bad or tragic or whatever. We want to give ourselves we want to give ourselves an out when it comes to that. When it comes to taking 100% responsibility for the reality that we're experiencing in our life. However, when we think about the fact that reality is dictated by our own thoughts, perceptions, definitions, and beliefs, we have that so much power. We have so much power. We were sitting here during Hurricane Michael. I think the winds got as high as 135 miles an hour. We were watching the chaos go on around us from the bedroom with no power, and we were just sitting around watching a movie. We weren't concerned about trees falling on the house, and you can't control that. If a tree comes down, a 60-foot pine tree comes down, hey, it comes down. You're not going to do anything about it. You just deal with the aftermath and make decisions, good decisions after it's happened. And we didn't have power for 4 days, so the community comes together. We go to get gasoline for our generators. We make treks to where we can make cell phone calls and ask people if they need, call somebody. Do we need to call a relative? Give them the name, give them the number, tell them you're okay. Everybody started cleaning up their yard. Everybody checked on everybody, made sure everybody was all right. It wasn't this you can either face that situation with fear or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fear or the
no. I'm chuckling because I was thinking about you watching the movie because I was in one hurricane in my lifetime, and I was down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and we had a beautiful place on the beach, and the water was coming in through the sliding glass doors. It was just pouring into the room. Didn't matter. And I called my mother, and I was like, Mom, I'm in a hurricane. And she goes, so? What do you want me to do about it? And I was like, wait. She was home and safe and dry. And I was like, well, and and then it just made me laugh. I did. I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. What do you want me to do about it? But it's funny because it's that exactly what you were saying, that perception, how you see things. And she wasn't worried for my safety. So as soon as my mom was not worried for my safety, then I was like, oh, okay, I'll be fine. But it just takes that moment of maybe perhaps seeing something through somebody else's eyes that helps us shift our perspective.
I agree. Yeah. It's a function of contrast, too. We always... we mention this, I think, on every show. Contrast is important. Being in a hurricane versus not being in a hurricane. If you've never been in one before, it's a whole different experience. If you have the contrast, you know what to do, when to do it, and some people just leave. They just lock their house up and move in the opposite direction of where the hurricane is supposed to hit. As we had several friends do. You drive 3 hours to stay in a hotel for 2 or 3 or 4 nights because your house doesn't have power. You pack up the dogs and the cat, and you go. We chose not to do that because it wasn't supposed to be as bad. It turned out that if 3 degrees, if it hadn't bent to the east 3 degrees at 2 o'clock in the morning, we'd have been hammered, which is really interesting. Like, a lot of people got hammered, and I'm talking about really hammered. I'm talking about trees coming down hammered, and the worst of it. And that's a good analogy too. Sometimes we're only a degree or two away from being able to from something bothering us to a different extent, based on what we know, based on our own experiential wisdom. I find that for that's how quickly things can change. But we have the ability in an absolute instant to, even though things have changed outside of us, to change what's going on inside of us. And when we do, bam, guess what happens? It's a whole different world. We can see things differently. We can be have an experience that is completely the antithesis of what everybody else is having, because they're following some societal norm that you have to be this way, that has to happen. You need to be sad. You need to be grieving. You need to be, I'm going, no, I don't need to be doing all of that. I don't need to go through it. I understand that I'm the one in control of what's happening. And as I believe Carol's teachers, the teachers have said one time that, human souls grieve too deeply and for too long. And it's true, because the depth of grief, the depth of sadness, it really is. It's like putting a blinder over your eyes. Mm-hmm. You're no longer able to sense or see or perceive anything around you and how it can help. It's like you're just stuck in a dark room, and that is not a fun place to be. It's not a fun place at all. And right. I find it's interesting because our youth out there today are much more sensitive to what's going on, and I can't tell you the reason why. I have my ideas as to why that may be the case. However, those are my ideas. But this is something that is students are becoming when they leave the home at 18 and they're going off to college. Their perceptions of things are much more harsh. They feel things much more deeply, that you and I would certainly take for granted as being, well, that's just life. So what? Mm-hmm. To them, it's the end of the world. And I don't know what your thoughts are about that. However, I'm sitting there saying, wait a minute, how can this be the end of the world? That's something so simple. And I ask myself, what's been missed? What did they miss when they were growing up? Were they prevented from experiencing the contrast between light and dark, between positive and negative, between dark and light, so that they could distinguish the differences between the two experientially and say, oh, okay, well, I can respond to it this way, or I can respond to it that way. Bashar was talking about one other thing too, and so is Carol and the teachers. Teachers were talking about you'll know you've changed when you respond to the same situations that you used to have differently. Mm-hmm. You no longer, get so when you no longer dig deep down into the depths of the negative frequencies. Now you're more neutral. You're more, so what? Hey, it's something that happens. It's something that happens, and we just have to, move through it, move on. That's it.
And it may be because of technology, because everything has become so instantaneous. There was a time when you had to dial somebody on a rotary phone, and if they were not at home and did not have an answering machine, you couldn't leave a message. So you had no idea. And if you did have an answering machine, then people would leave a message, but sometimes people didn't always pick up their message. So it wasn't this instantaneous reaction, like I've got this XYZ situation happening, and I'm expecting a response immediately. Because they can, now we can text and we can take a picture, and it becomes, I think it almost created a heightened sense of, I don't know what the word is, drama, less freedom. I mean, I think we're tied to things. I think that when you and I grew up, there was a lot more freedom. We would sort of say goodbye to our parents when we went off to school, and they trusted that we would come home off the school bus, or we would make arrangements to be at somebody else's home. But it was just sort of, I think that it was maybe a little bit freer, even though we have all of these tools now that keep us connected. I think it also energetically has kind of changed us up a little bit, because I know that sometimes when I get a text message, the impulse is to want to have to respond right away. And if somebody doesn't get a response right away, well, why didn't you text me back? But I think it is, you can step back from that and then again, see through the eyes of love. So if you look at a path that is dark and laden with fear, love can illuminate that path. And it is how you choose to see through the eyes of love that empowers us to create and to manifest. And which is why you have that entrepreneurial spirit, because you look to the opportunities, you sort of welcome in whatever it is with an open heart, and then whenever an obstacle does come across your path, you sort of accept whatever it is, but you kind of move through it and prioritize what is most important, and then look at the possibilities and focus on that. And I don't know how you give that to somebody. I wish I could sometimes, because I don't know. We were blessed to be born when we were, and grew up in that moment in time, and there's blessings in growing up and in the world as it is today. It's just different.
Yeah, I agree with you 110%. I mean, it is a world that has become much more busy, much more. We I guess do grow up with wanting everything now. Not we were less patient than we used to be. A world where speed is of the essence, so to speak, and the faster things come, the more success we attach to it. And the less successful if the opposite occurs. And yet, when we look at where students, the kind of freedom, in my view, there's fear drives a lot of things, because in the media, negativity sells, and negativity is negative events have a way of becoming synonymous with fear, right? And when that happens, if all you see is events that make you fearful, and that's the way that everybody says you should respond to those events, then you're just simply going to grow up afraid of stepping outside of your front door, of driving across the country, of whatever it may be, the smallest thing, the biggest thing. In our day, I don't know. I agree with you. I had a boatload of freedom. I had more freedom than you could possibly imagine. I mean,
especially because you were in another country, and not just one other country, but many other countries.
Yeah, we were on the base, or at least a compound in Taiwan, where we had a gate and a guard at the compound. So not just anybody could come into the compound. Then we had in Philippines, we lived off base for a while with no real security, and then we moved on base when we had a house available, and a couple months later, and we lived on base where you had full security. And then in Turkey, we lived off base. There was no base. We lived on the economy. We had an apartment, and we lived in the city like everybody else. So when I was leaving our apartment to go play music with my brother, we were off to go practice, or we were off to go to the teen club or to the bowling alley or whatever. We just left and went. I would come home I was 12, 13, and 14. 12 and 13 mainly. We were playing in a band, and I was coming home after we'd do a gig at the NCO club till 1:30 in the morning. And
That's
then we
amazing.
pack up our stuff. Yeah, we pack up our stuff, and we put it in a safe place. And then I get home with my brother somewhere around 2:30 in the morning, and nobody was worried. Nobody was concerned. We're running around a city a foreign city in the 70s at 2:30 in the morning. I was like, that was normal. That was normal.
Right.
That was normal. It's like, hey, well, get up in the morning and how would your gig go last night? Oh, it went really, really good. We had this, we had that. Awesome. It's like it's at the breakfast table. That's what would happen. And you're like, I see these kids today that are 11, 12 years old, 13, 14, can't even leave the house on their own, and because there's so much fear that they're
right.
going to you'd be taken, that somebody's going to drive up and take them away. But this is what the media actually does. It makes it look like these things happen on every street corner, that danger is lurking everywhere, right? I don't think there's any more danger now than there was when I was growing up, except for the fact that the media happens to display those events 100 times more than they used to. They never used to get any credence. Serial killers existed in the 60s and the 70s, but today that serial killer would be every 5 minutes they'd have an expose about him. They'd have news stories about him every night. They'd make you think that you were going to walk out your front door and be absconded with. But that occurs, and I find this, believe it or not. I've told 3 people in the last 2 weeks that I went to Turkey, and the question that came out of their mouth was it safe? That was the question. It wasn't, hey,
how beautiful. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it was it safe? Did you feel safe? And I was like, well, of course. But that's when you see when you see what's happening in the Middle East, the news makes it seem like it's happening everywhere in the Middle East. When something's happening in Europe, it makes it look like it's happening all over Europe. Now, I must admit, I have learned some of the rules for traveling as an American, and I'm African American, so I can actually, people don't know who I am or where I'm from unless I open my mouth. I could be from anywhere, and I like them not knowing where I'm from. Sometimes when I'm out running around the street corner or something like that. But when I was in Egypt, they thought I was Egyptian. They thought I was from Aswan, which is where darker-skinned people come from in Egypt, is Aswan. And they'd start talking to me in Egyptian, and I was like, no, man, I'm American, right? And then they go, oh, I see. And people from the Aswan were looked down upon. So I get initially treated, badly, and then they go, oh, I'm sorry, you're American. Yeah, I am. But this is what happens around the world, is that you don't flaunt your being American. I mean, there's no reason to think that you're better than somebody else. And so what I do, in essence, is I don't wear hats with American flags on them, or coats or jackets or whatever.
No, I wouldn't think you would.
There's no reason for anybody to
right.
know who I am or where I'm from. That's not me. That's just where I happen to be living. So you don't want people's perceptions to fall around the fact of where you're from. It's more about connecting with them in a positive way, right? And them connecting with you, you with them. That's where the fun is. And so it's I just find that a lot of people have less freedom. A lot of kids have less freedom now, the freedom that can actually help them develop into who they are, and in ways that we used to back, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. We had that ability. And today everything's driven by fear. Phones in people's pockets. I had a teacher tell me, believe it or not, she taught high school, and she said she could not it was against the rules to ask the kids to put their cell phones by the front door when they walked in, so they didn't have them at the chair. It was against the rules. I had a principal.
Oh, I'm surprised.
Can't tell them. Can't do that. I played golf with a principal, a high school principal, and he said, no, you can't do that nowadays. And I said, why do they have to have their device at their desk? It's a safety thing. Parents want their kids to have their device available in case there is a shooting incident. Oh my gosh! And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Yeah, it's true. Teachers have to compete with things, with devices and the information, addictive information, the addictive nature of those devices. In order to, it's just one more hurdle they have to get over in order to get a message across. And
right.
So this is the world we kind of live in. So the question we have is, how do you experience the calmness in this kind of environment that has been portrayed to be so dangerous and so negative, so fearful, fear-based, I should say. How do we do that? I always go back to Wayne Dyer. Loving people live in a loving world. Hostile people living in a hostile world. Same world. True. And I think that wherever we are, whether we're at a crossroads in our life or we are having these perceived obstacles that the media is projecting to us, we have that choice, and we can see things through our own eyes, through a different lens than what is being portrayed to us. And that, I think, I love the word discernment. When I first started in my path of spirituality, that was one of the things that they said, no matter what the intuition or the insight that you receive, always ask for discernment. The right to decide what is right for you, and to know that. And I use that oftentimes even when I'm having interactions with people. I will look into their eyes, because I truly do believe that the eyes are the windows to the soul. And that sometimes when I look into a stranger's eyes, I see things that tell me a story well beyond what you can even in a conversation. So yesterday I was in a store, and there were some Hispanic gentlemen. I don't know what country they're from, and I was watching them. I kept bumping into them in different places and interacting, and I had this sense that they really don't have too much, and that the things that they were looking to purchase was really sort of a stretch. And I looked at the one gentleman and I said, where are you from? And he's like, I don't speak any English. And I noticed that they had paint on their clothes. So I said, are you painters? And we got into, he handed me his phone and he wanted me to speak into it. And we got into this conversation. And he basically said he came to the United States with his family, his 2 daughters and his wife, who was pregnant in December, and no, they do not have very many things. And I said, guess what? I have lots of things that I would be happy to give you. And he looked at me, and I said, and what it does, for me anyway, not only am I able to help them out, but I don't have to take it to a donation center. They're welcome to. I said, you can come and look at all the stuff I have. If you want to take it, you can take it. You don't have to. Whatever you want to do. But there was something in the eyes, something in their eyes that just, really touched my heart. And I don't know. I wanted to connect with them for whatever the reason. And I think that we have that opportunity when we focus on those windows to the soul, the kindness, the love that we see, those choices. And I'm sure, and I can imagine that perception of the fear and the language barrier and all of those other things. But there again, technology made it possible for us to communicate, because I said my Spanish is very poor. I can
say a few things, but not very much. But I think that it is what you choose to focus on, Michael, and the gift. And who knows what the reason that I was in that. I wasn't really planning on going to the store. I was going to go get some things for the animals. And I thought, oh, you know what, I need to get a storage bin. And I stopped and was in a place that I wasn't expecting to be. And that was how I met them. And, so we'll see what evolves from it. But I think that you sort of choose to be in those places, like you are when a hurricane's going on. You choose to be in your bedroom enjoying a movie and not really worried about what's going on around. So you're using that choice as you would seeing through the eyes of love. It empowers you. It empowers you to be in a peaceful space. Yeah, there's all this stuff going on around you, but when you just sit and you're like, I'm in my bed. There's something cozy about that, right?
Oh yeah.
It feels safe.
Oh, yeah.
It feels comfortable. So
we could also
how do you access those points? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How do you access? That's your question.
Yeah.
How do you access?
Yeah.
First one is to constantly be aware that you have the choice to be there, and because that's easily forgotten when you're in the midst of something that's occurring outside of you. And it's kind of like you have to train yourself to, in moments like that, to step back and remember. Take yourself outside of what's happening, especially if it's happening it's happening in your outer world. When I wrote my book Zero Adversity, I was thinking to myself, you're the kind of life-changing things that occur are really, for you, are things that you're exposed to. We don't have a lot of direct adversity or direct situations that challenges ourselves on a daily basis. Usually we're reacting to somebody else's challenge, something that's going on outside of us that we're making a perception of and then responding to based on that perception that we have of it. So it's a function of remembering, teaching yourself to remember very quickly that you have a choice. You can choose how you feel in any given moment, regardless of what's going on. That you don't have to come out with these rote responses. Even if society says that's a response you should have, you don't need to have that response. You can hear that someone has passed and then start laughing and go, gosh, I remember the last time we laughed together. I remember the last time that we got together and we had such a good time. You don't have to all of a sudden go into boom, sad mode, like afraid to say anything that might be positive or misconstrued by someone as, oh, hey, you're not grieving, you're not sad about that. That's the way society can be. And you can say, look, I have the choice to think anything I want to think, feel any way I want to feel. I just choose personally, me. I tell them, I don't want to be sad when someone passes away. I had the ability to spend them. I'm incredibly grateful I had the opportunity to hang with them. That's the kind of my neutral response to hearing that somebody passed. Grateful if it was somebody I knew personally. Grateful that we had that time back in whenever it was. He was a very nice person, and that's it. I mean, what else can I say? It's that alertness, the awareness, and then make a choice. Make a choice. Be constantly alert of how you're perceiving things and make a choice. And to be positive versus negative. And then teach yourself through practice to respond positively to events, or at least in a neutral way. Oh, that's interesting. I think we talked about that a few dozen shows ago. Wow, that's interesting. That bridge just came down in whatever that city was, Scranton, Pennsylvania. Was that where it was? The Scranton, the bridge that came down.
I thought that was in Maryland.
Was
that not?
Baltimore.
Yeah.
Sorry, apologize. Baltimore.
Yeah.
It came down, and I looked at this. The news was playing it over and over and over and over again. They couldn't get enough of seeing this bridge collapse. And there were some people who were on the bridge, and I'm going, I said, I hope those people, the people that they know, I hope those people get the ascend in a positive way. I have this way of sending light energy to love and light energy to those kinds of situations. Because the person that I know who was not a channel but a very gifted psychic back about 35 years ago, she said the best thing you can do in life, literally, is when you drive by a hospital, is to wish all those who've passed on well, bless them in their ascension. That's the best thing you can do. Send them love and light and bless them in their ascension. Because there's lots of people ascending from medical facilities, right? Lots of spirits going back to join their tribe, and she said that has a lot of that. Sending that energy really helps them. And I said, wow, I'll remember that now. So I remember that every time I drive by a urgent care or anywhere where somebody could be in distress and be have passed on at some particular point in time. And that's kind of the way that I looked at that on those people on the bridge. I wish them well. I can't do anything to go help them or anything like that. I mean, that's we have this tendency to want to say, I need to feel bad because that happened. And you can actually send them love and you can send them light and wish them well and have that sort of neutral to higher frequency response to that situation and still enjoy your life and be happy and be loving and be empathetic and compassionate and kind to the next person. You don't have to be sad about it and have that basically control your day. And let that dictate the rest of your day.
Right.
Which you have to do. So what would you do?
Well, you talk about that, Michael, and I think what you're doing, and I do the same thing when I see an accident. I just try to send love and light and healing around it. And I think what you do, and when you do that, it grounds you in that empathy and understanding. You've had challenges and hardship in your life, and you can send that energy with grace and love, knowing that every situation there is some form of resilience. I have a friend that just lost his mother, 95 years old, and he said, my mother had a great life. I spoke with him earlier today, and he said, we were all around her. She was, started to go a little bit downhill. She had lived on her own up until about 6 months ago. And he said, I brought down my guitar. We all sat with her for the last week, and we sang songs. And he said, and she passed peacefully and crossed that threshold. And I thought, geez, you know what? That's really beautiful. They allowed her to pass with that grace, surrounding her with music and song and the things that brought joy to her. And he brought his dog, and he said, it was really quite wonderful. And I think that that's really when you allow that and you really look through the eyes of love, you can see the beauty in everything all around you. And that, as you had mentioned, death does not have to be a fearful experience. A friend of mine sings in what she calls a threshold choir, and they go by the bedsides of people who are going to pass, strangers, and they sing to them beautiful songs until they pass, and so that they're not alone. And I think that is truly a gift to be able to do that. And whatever it is that we choose, there's lots of ways that we can sort of be that threshold for somebody else, that we can take that higher path, no matter what it is. And as Wayne Dyer says, be in that loving world.
Yeah.
Truly.
I agree 110%. It's beautiful. Loving that they would do that. And, there's, as I wrote in my book, there's a positive way to deal with everything. And what people don't get is neutral is positive. We don't have to succumb to the depths of negativity, negative feelings and emotions of fear and worry and frustration and anger and all those, anxiety. We don't have to go there. We can just basically remember that we can say in many situations, it's just something. It's life. That's life. It happens. And instead of doing this, I'm not going to call it a song and dance, so to speak, but it's kind of like that. It's a rote response that, because people don't know what to say, they don't know how to feel. They feel, and this is what I call letting outside circumstances control how you feel. And if you want to maintain the freedom to think any way you want to think, and mainly positively, then you have to learn how to deal with the situations and circumstances that unfold around you that other people have been taught to believe that they are bad,
right?
That they're a negative, and that you should react a certain way for it. Otherwise, you're not showing respect, or you're not showing reverence. And it's still true. I think about my dogs, and I don't think about them being gone as much as I think about the little instances that we had together that were so funny, and poignant. You have to do that. Then a smile comes to my face. And when someone dies, the card I write is, hey, when you move from sadness to gratitude, you're healing.
Yeah.
You're on track. Because
it's kind of like, for me, playing a game of hide and go seek. If you've ever, we would find some really amazing hiding places, and some, I'm sure my parents knew exactly where we were. But just because something is not in view doesn't mean that it's not there. And I think that when you hold something in your heart as dear, whether it be a person or a dog or whatever it is, it's just right around the corner. It's just not in our view. And that it's the same thing, that when you, like, again, going back to seeing through those eyes of love, it's like there is something timeless in that. And, my mom's on the other side, and I don't feel her any further away. I don't have the physicality, but it's just, again, I think sometimes it's the moments in time, and it makes things more precious when you think back to the times that I spent with my grandparents or my parents or whatever. It's, the world changes and it evolves, but it's that choice. I choose to embrace all of the things. My mother loved to wonder at things, and she used to sometimes, I think when we were teenagers, when you're embarrassed by your parents, my mother would go up and talk to strangers and be, oh my goodness, and she would just get so excited by incredible things that other people may not have even noticed. And it truly is a gift to be able to do that. But she was always one who chose to see through the eyes of love, no matter what it was. She had, and not always her life was easy, but I think that it was an inspiration and a model for me, and to see that laughter and love and the light and the joy that came from her that she shared with other people. And I think seeing through the eyes of love is just exactly that. And Michael, I applaud you, because you help me do that all the time. You'll send me something and I'll be like, wow. It's delightful, and to have that opportunity to share in that and to see things differently. Both you and I look at the stars. You have a fabulous telescope, and you'll send me some different things, and your brother has an even more fabulous telescope. But I'll get out my app, and I'll be like, and that's why actually last night before the storm came in, I was taking some pictures of some of the stars, and I'm like, what is that over there? And I found out it was Vega, and all of these different things that normally are not so illuminated in the sky, and recognizing that they were there. And then before there was cloud cover, and then I didn't see them anymore, and then there was the crazy storm, and now we have blue skies today and the sun's out. And what a great metaphor for life, right?
It is. It's amazing. Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, it's all a matter of how we see it, you know. And as Bashar says, the belief systems we have innate to ourselves that we've bought into that happen to color our thinking and our feelings and our responses to what we experience in life. I know that I love looking at stars. I do have a telescope. My brother's the one with the real fancy one that takes pictures of different things, asteroids and comets and planets and star clusters and nebulae and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty phenomenal stuff. But he's a pretty high-end astronomer from an amateur astronomer perspective. You know, that's just who he is. Always fascinated about the stars, and it is fascinating to stand outside in the evening on a very clear night, especially in the winter because there's no humidity. In the crispness of the winter, you can really see everything. By the way, when I go to Alaska tomorrow, one of the things that I'm going to be doing is, I'm looking forward to, I should say, is seeing the stars. Looking at night. You know, I mean, I'm fascinated about it. I can just stand out all night and just look for constellations and see the planets, and I've got the app that shows me where they are, so I can, you know, see their lineup. You know, you get the east-west and where they come up and where they go down, and it's really rather fun. Although I believe even in May in Alaska, you're going to have more. We're going to have a lot more daylight than we are at night. I'm going to have to get up in the middle of the night for those few hours where we have complete darkness, and actually go outside and see. And by the way, one of my all-time bucket list things is to go play golf for 24 hours in a country.
Oh my! How fun!
That's just one of the things that I've wanted to do for a long time. Is just go get on a golf course and just play and play and play and play. It's going to play at 2:00 in the morning. You know, just play, have a good time. I hope the golf courses are not open 24 hours. Of course, I'm in big trouble, but I think you can play at various times of the day and night when the sun is up and never sets. I've been there a long time. I grew up, spent the first 3 years of my life in Alaska. My mother used to tell us about that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah, my sister was born there, but I spent the first 3 years of my life. I wasn't 3 weeks old, and our family trekked from Niagara Falls, New York, down through the United States and up a gravel paved. It wasn't paved, unpaved, a gravel road, which was the Alaskan Highway. Drove all the way up to Anchorage, out of the U.S., up through Canada. We have Super 8 movie film of the gravel road and us on it. My brother and I, because my sister wasn't born yet. It was really interesting. You know, I guess I tell people, hey, that's the reason why I'm not a big fan of the cold. Okay, I've experienced the contrast of both. Extreme cold and extreme heat and humidity in the tropics and in Formosa and the Philippines, and I prefer that. I prefer the humidity and the like to the cold. You know, I don't know. That's just the reason why. But you know, we are all a product of our experiences, our experiential wisdom, and and what we've encountered in life. And, you know, when it comes back to the original topic of our freedom, and as we started out with in the show, and our ability to choose our own path, choose how we think and everything else, that's utmost in my mind at all times. And I encourage our listeners to do the same thing, is to take greater responsibility for the environment for your reality that you're experiencing. On every level, you're creating it by your thoughts and your feelings and your reactions and responses. You are creating that situation the way it is. You're experiencing it the way you're experiencing it, which is probably, in my view, a better way to put it. We don't have to. We can choose the way we experience situations and circumstances. That hurricane, the eye, we can be living in the calmness of everything around us going nuts. In a society would say is going crazy, going to hell in a handbasket, however you want to say it. Chaotic. We can be calm under those circumstances. All we have to do is remember that that's a choice that we have. And be in that eye, baby. Be in that eye.
Remember the wall. And I think too, Michael, going back to, I love Pam Gregory when she said, what would love do? What would love do? Drop into the heart and ask yourself that. And I think when you do that, it kind of creates that wall. What would love do? That's the wall. And then you make your decisions based on that. And I think that when, you cannot be in love and fear at the same time. And so when you ask yourself that question, it stops it, and it allows you that moment, that grace to be able to make that choice to perceive things through the eyes of love. And that heart connection and the love, it transforms everything. And one of my favorite authors of The Little Prince, Antoine Saint-Exupéry, said, it's only with the heart that one can see rightly. What's essential is invisible to the eye. And that's love. It's invisible, but the most powerful thing that I know. And so grateful for you, Michael, for so many reasons, and for our audience tuning into us. And it's just really amazing that we have so many beautiful people that connect with us here on Connect to Love on PRN FM and also on Instagram and on all of the different podcast stations. It's just truly is a blessing. And so seeing you through the eyes of love and wishing you all the best on your trip, Michael.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it, really. Got another day and a half of the craziness, but yeah, that's just loving every minute of it. I hope you do too. Thank you.
Thank you. And until next time.